Hello, my name is Tam and I'm in Tobiano on the unceded territory of the Kamloops, Tsikwatin people. And my hope for today is that our session will offer not only a foundation in definitions and impacts, but also some practical and cultural tools to support healing in a way that's relational, respectful, and empowering. So welcome everyone. Today's seminar focuses on substance use through an Indigenous lens with a particular emphasis on how it impacts caregivers, families, and communities. And we recognize that caregivers are often on the front lines, whether in formal roles or as extended family, and may either be the first-hand witness or party responsible for substance use. So before formally starting our session, I'd like to take a moment and ask that we center ourselves, our spirits, and our communities in order to do this good work. These topics can often be triggering for many of us who have a lived experience with substance use, but our hopes are that this session will be helpful, restorative, and uplifting. So who we are, Indigenous Caregivers of BC. And our work is grounded in cultural safety, trauma-informed practice, and restoring Indigenous ways of knowing and being. This training reflects that commitment. It's not just about recognizing or identifying harm. It's about finding paths to healing that are culturally and spiritually relevant to the people that we serve. So what is the purpose of today's seminar? We're going to look at 4 primary goals. Review the impact substance use has on Indigenous families and communities, to identify indicators of substance use and potential impact on parenting, to identify collaborative strategies to engage parents in addressing substance use while ensuring safety and well-being of children, and consider the potential role community support workers may play in supporting recovery and healing processes. And we'll certainly be touching on many other topics during the session, but the above highlighted outcomes are our focus for today. So we'll go through 5 key topics today, moving from understanding what substance use is to how it shows up in communities, and finally, how we can respond. Throughout each topic, you're encouraged to reflect on your own experiences and write down any questions or items that resonate with you. If something resonates or challenges you, that's welcome. This is a space for learning and growth. All right, into topic 1, defining substance use. As a repeated note that we will hear throughout this training, language matters. So keep that at the forefront. While specific definitions can sometimes lose some of the nuance or agility required of our roles, it is important as a basis to begin to understand the roots of substance use and the ways we can more aptly address it. Definitions and context. Understanding language is important. We often use substance use, or perhaps the more common substance abuse, as a catch-all, but we need to be precise. And this is not only because it may have an impact on our legal roles, understandings, or obligations, but it will allow us a more fulsome approach for healing. Substance use refers to any use, legal or illegal, while problematic use refers to when that use negatively impacts a person's life. A substance use disorder involves a cluster of symptoms that can include dependence, cravings, withdrawal, and loss of control. Importantly, use in and of itself does not equal abuse or neglect. Concerns arise when the impact affects the child's safety and well-being. Another model to understand some of the language and verbiage, understanding that our role is to remain non-judgmental. We need to be supportive and understanding that a journey or a life path varies over time. What is problematic substance use? This definition from the ministry helps to clarify any potential questions. So the issue isn't the substance alone, but how it disrupts someone's ability to care for themselves or others, right? In child welfare and caregiver contexts, it's vital to separate stigma from fact, and the mere presence of use, say recreational cannabis or prescribed opioids, doesn't automatically signal danger. Our role is to look holistically at function, context, and risk, not just symptoms. Next, you're going to watch a video, Shane Baker's personal story of opioid recovery. And Shane's story brings these ideas into focus. He's a Gitxsan man whose injury and prescribed opioids led to a long struggle with addiction. But what helped him heal wasn't just clinical treatment, it was culture. Yes, he is a grown adult, but these stories resonate with caregivers and those we look after as well. There are levels of care and consideration around safety we should always have in mind, and those can even vary and look different given a specific circumstance. So by connecting with ceremony, language, family, and identity, Shane found strength. And as you're watching this video, ask yourself, how might you work with your children and families to assist with their healing journeys?
My name is Shane Baker, and I'm 39 years old, and I'm a member of the Gitxsan First Nation. I got a brain injury in 2003 at about 2:30 in the morning. I fell from a second floor of a parking lot and sustained massive facial and skull fractures 2.5 weeks later. When I was first coming out of my coma and I realized that I couldn't see anymore, I thought that my life was over. I wasn't able to take care of myself. I wasn't able to cook for myself. I wasn't able to clean my house. I remember crying to my mom saying that I didn't want to live anymore. And I meant it. In the first year, I refused all medications. After I started having seizures, the pain became so intense that I just couldn't handle it anymore. It started off with Tylenol 3 and quickly went to Percocet and then to OxyContin. I was completely addicted probably in a couple months. When I first got on the painkillers, I was in so much pain that a little bit of relief was appreciated. But the problem is that they work too well. Often I would go through my 2 weeks of prescription in a week and a half or a week. My family physician would prescribe it, and I would just tell him that I couldn't see and I lost them. I have a brain injury, my memory is not good. It's quite scary how fast I got addicted to those. I think that things changed for me in my life the night that my mom picked me up for dinner one night. She looked at me and said that I almost lost you once, but now I feel like I'm losing you for good. Very soon after that, I started getting connected with a medicine woman. She started explaining to me what the medicine wheel was and how I could use it in my life. I find these days that our society in general, addiction is looked upon very poorly, and there's an awful stigma to addiction. But I was proud to say that I had chosen to learn about myself and to learn teachings of my culture. Growing up in the city, I was away from a lot of my culture, and as I started getting into my healing and recovery, I realized that that was the missing link. It was my culture, it was my identity, it was traditions, it was how I felt about myself as a Gitxsan man. And as I started to develop these relationships with elders, with my parents, with new friends, It started to give me insight into who I was. What I soon realized is that I found it to be very empowering to talk about the addiction that I was going through. For all the years that I was struggling, I was a lost warrior, and it was culture and my community that helped me find myself and become the warrior that I am today. Yes, I have been an addict, but I also made the decisions in my life to change that. It was a little scary to let those shackles free, but it was also very empowering to realize that you do have control. I think one of the most exciting times of this whole process was when I realized that having other positive and like-minded people around me was going to be a real key to my wellness. I don't know if I would suggest going cold turkey the way I did. It was pretty brutal for about a week. I do believe that there's many ways of looking at addiction, because when you're going through something, everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be listened to realize that they matter, that people care about them and want to help them. So I think it's critical that we start having these conversations about drug use with our loved ones, with our friends, our family, our coworkers. It wasn't until I really looked inside to realize that I still had much to offer the world, and I just needed to find myself.
Topic 2, understanding substance use. So this next section is about broadening our understanding of addiction and substance use. Culturally safe and trauma-informed practices don't just include Indigenous culture. It uses all of these fulsome aspects as a starting point. Western models often pathologize addiction, and Indigenous frameworks tend to ask, what pain is this person carrying? How can we support their healing and community? It's a shift from punishment to restoration. Indigenous wellness framework is our next slide here. This framework includes physical, emotional, spiritual, and relational wellness. All are deeply connected. You may have heard of the medicine wheel model. This is one example of a holistic view of wellness that's widely shared across Indigenous nations. Healing must involve the whole person and ideally the whole community, and our goal should always be framed as ways to look out and care for one another. This model asks that we seek to centralize a belief in one's connection to the many kinds of wellness we see here, all supported by a caring environment. Cultural safety and trauma-informed practices. So, it's really important that caregivers practice in a culturally safe and trauma-informed way when working with Indigenous children, their families, and within communities around substance use issues. This includes developing an awareness of the power imbalances inherent in our relations, given historical colonization and the ongoing colonial relations and institutional discrimination embedded in our child welfare system. You may hear trauma-informed and think of it more as an operational buzzword, but in actuality, as caregivers, it means that we are understanding not just of our child's present, but their past and their future. And we can ask ourselves to better understand what could be seen at the roots of a behavior to better inform our approach. All right, now we're on to topic 3, factors that contribute to substance use. And the purpose here is to identify relevant factors that could influence or contribute to substance use. So let's look at topic 3. These next 2 slides are talking about factors that contribute to substance use. Indigenous communities face multiple compounding factors. We've got, loss of culture and language, colonization and land theft, residential schools and the 60s scoop, systemic racism and poverty. These aren't just history lessons. These determinants can shape current health outcomes, including substance use. And if we only focus on individual behavior and ignore these structural factors, we risk missing the root causes. And overrepresentation of Indigenous children in child welfare systems have severe consequences for health and well-being. And Indigenous people carry a disproportionate burden of poor health and disease in Canada, produced by, as it says here, social, political, economic, and cultural inequities related to historic and present-day colonization. So these factors, combined with unresolved grief from historical and intergenerational trauma, contribute to concerning after effects. And some of these are substance use, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, sexual abuse, family violence, low self-esteem, anxiety, suicide, and reducing harms associated with substance use and related mental health issues in a trauma-informed way are important priorities for Indigenous individuals, communities, and leaders as a way of restoring holistic health. So let me describe this picture, the pair of ACEs. The ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences test, is a questionnaire used to assess the extent of traumatic experiences in a person's childhood. It helps identify potential risks for negative health and social outcomes later in life. And the test is based on the idea that childhood trauma, such as abuse, neglect, or household dysfunction, can have long-lasting impacts on physical and mental health. So by adding in another layer, seen here as the roots, we observe how the history of racism and colonization or colonialism can impact our children in care and families. Connecting intergenerational trauma and substance use. Intergenerational trauma happens when the pain of one generation is passed to the next through behavior, beliefs, and even biology. For example, a grandparent who was in residential school may struggle to parent or express love, which then affects the next generation. Substance use may become a coping mechanism for this pain. Understanding this helps us respond with empathy, not judgment. For Indigenous people in Canada, colonialism has been a major source of intergenerational trauma. The residential school system is one example that led to intergenerational trauma for Indigenous people. Another example is the disproportionately high numbers of children who were removed from their families in the 60s scoop. The consequent trauma often manifests itself in higher rates of suicide, mental health and addictions issues in Indigenous populations, and significant disparities in health between First Nations and the general population. In First Nations worldviews, the impact of this trauma should be fully acknowledged, as should the efforts to address it. Topic 4, impacts of substance use. So now we look at how substance use affects families and communities. The statistics can seem shocking, but remember, behind these numbers are stories. A youth using substances may also be managing trauma, maybe poverty and systemic discrimination. Our responses must consider the full context, especially the unique challenges Indigenous adults and youth face. Youth exiting care are especially vulnerable. Without adequate supports, many turn to substances to cope. Domestic violence may increase when substance use is present, but again, substance use is often a symptom, not the root. We also need to challenge harmful stereotypes, which cause real harm and leads to biased decision making. Instead, let's ask, what supports would this family need to thrive? I think we should also remember how the two ACEs tests can impact our families and youth. Historical and familial inequities can play a large impact on current and future behaviors, but they can equally inform our solutions and ways of being. Guilt and shame are often a harsh added burden to the mothers of children who come to the attention of the child welfare system. Indigenous parents carry the additional weight of stereotypes, which are both greatly exaggerated and widely circulated within Canadian society. And as we have detailed and as seen in this graphic, Indigenous populations are overrepresented in the population affected by the impacts of substance use. I mean, these are big numbers here for sure. We're now going to watch another short video, and this one features the stories and voices of many Indigenous youth. So I hope you enjoy this. It's just over 8 minutes long.
Ani Bojo Harminishkak Indigenous Cause.
Ani Bojo Njikwes Dishnikas Wabjesh Dodem Wikwem Kong Donjiba.
Ani Bojo Carly Indigenous Cause.
My name is James Young, and I'm here doing my questions at Fort Carlton.
Oki Dante. My name is Laura Swellen of Chicho First Nations.
I think there's a very strong population of sober people within our communities that alienate people for using any kind of substance.
I felt rejected by my high school for punishing me for using medicine that helps me cope with difficulties at school. I feel that elders look down on me for using substance recreationally, that they do not recognize cannabis or mushrooms as medicine. It feels very lonely to be judged negatively based on my use, and this impacts my social life in many ways.
How do we shame and stereotype people who use substances? By treating them as less than and judging without knowing their situation.
What can be intimidating is the expectation that you have to be sober to attend ceremonies, that you have to be sober to attend sharing circles, or to attend anything that is a sacred practice. But sometimes attending that circle, attending that ceremony from afar, can be a breaking point or a catalyst to some to begin their recovery and healing journey.
Apathy would be the perfect word for people who stereotype users.
People can use substances in healthy ways, and even if people are using substances in maybe more unhealthy ways, it doesn't mean that they're bad people themselves. Substance use is just one part of who we are as people.
I feel like I'm being supported when my voice is being heard.
Being around people who have my best interest at heart.
I feel supported with my use at LGBT organizations, also with my doctor, and also with my mom.
A safe space is somewhere where you feel comfortable, unconditionally accepted, and supported. That it's understood that this is your journey and the people around you are there to create a safe environment and safe support system for whatever you need, wherever you are in your journey.
When I think of support, I think of the 7 grandfathers, especially Zun Gadeowen, bravery. I think it takes a lot of courage to go into a community or any group I remember my first group, I only made it as far as the door, and that's okay. Like, as long as we keep showing up for ourselves, it doesn't matter how fast you're going in your journey of recovery, because we're all going at different paces. And by the second time I went to my group, I think I just sat and listened, and I didn't really feel pressured to share my journey, but it's okay to work your way up there.
Indigenous knowledge impacts my healing journey by providing my spirit with the strength and encouragement to go further, because there is so much more to learn, such as patience and understanding and respecting one's culture and traditional ways. It makes me feel proud and confident to do better than yesterday and to continue moving onward with my healing journey.
Indigenous knowledge provides a guideline on how to endure life's tribulations and spiritual connectedness to the land and living creatures, undisturbed by man-made developments.
In my healing journey, I often think about my grandmother, who I was named after, and also the support that I have always had. So that's a big part of my sense of belonging. I think that's very, very important to an individual.
I feel supported in the community when I can practice my culture safely. To me, this can mean having a dedicated place to smudge, as well as having access to my medicines like sage.
In my life, it helps me to feel content and to feel that I am connected to my spirit, to my community, both past and present, and that I'm supported by them as well. I always have a home and a safe space to go to, and I always have that unconditional love and support.
In order to feel supported within our communities, there needs to be specific programs in place, such as addiction programs, health and well-being, holistic practices, elder and youth programs, such as storytelling.
When young people are involved with committed, caring adult role models who mentor, coach, and guide them, great things happen. We need to encourage community members to step up to the plate and volunteer for these activities and allow money to go towards needed equipment, participant fees, facility rentals, transportation if needed, and healthy snacks when kids do attend.
I've learned that the best way to balance those supports is by following your own compass. You listen to your spirit and you listen to what is right for you.
I believe that mainstream and traditional supports can go hand in hand, and how that looks like is very individual. What works for one person may not work for another. It is what the person in recovery wants and needs.
Miigwech.
So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Masicho.
Miigwech. Pamampi.
So let us take a quick moment to reflect on the many voices and stories presented in the video, along with the questions we have presented on screen. I would ask that we take these stories into account of what we have covered so far, as well as how these voices might reflect on our attention and practices as caregivers. As we move into topic 5, we start to shift from understanding to action through culturally grounded, appropriate, and centered care. This kind of care means drawing on traditional practices, respecting oral traditions, and recognizing that healing is communal. And as caregivers, you are part of that circle of care. Your relationships, consistency, and non-judgmental support can be powerful medicine. Harm reduction isn't just about clean supplies or safe use. It's about meeting people where they are and walking with them towards wellness. Indigenous harm reduction might include sweat lodges, talking circles, role modeling, wellness in community, maybe storytelling. And these practices restore dignity and reweave the social fabric that colonialism tore apart. So an Indigenous model for harm prevention and intervention. So the recognition of the power of cultural healing has inspired Indigenous leaders and advocates to use traditional models of healing and care, such as using touch, dance, and stories for healing, the talking circle to help people deal with shame and grief, sweat lodge and sweetgrass ceremonies, the sentencing circle to encourage a renewed sense of responsibility for their actions among Indigenous offenders and to emphasize the community's responsibility for the offender. These ideas have solidified into the reality of Indigenous training and treatment centers as examples for community transformation. There can be so many buzzwords, techniques, methods, or practices involved, and we often want to find the quick or easy to manage solution. So this graphic can help break some of these ideas down, but at the end of the day, we are here for our youth and families, and regardless of what we learn, we are always trying to help, love, and respect. And language matters, and so does tone. So saying addict or user can dehumanize. We could say person who uses substances or person in recovery instead, right? So ask yourself, do I see this person as more than their substance use? Challenge stereotypes in your workplace, educate others, and lead with respect. Let's take these important steps to help end stigma. So as the slide talks about, do not define any person by their drug use. Be respectful, compassionate, and caring to those who use drugs. Educate your friends and family. Share facts and challenge those stereotypes. Remember that addiction is a treatable medical condition, not a choice, and is deserving of care just like any other medical condition. Be aware of your attitudes and behavior because they may be influenced by stereotypes, negative stories, and images about people who use drugs. We may often think of healing or recovery as a linear process, that we can provide specific inputs and we will be assured of specific outputs. The stages of change model reminds us that few things in life are as simple as this, and many changes can take time or jump around from step to step. People may cycle through contemplation, relapse, and back to action. That doesn't mean they've failed. It means they're learning. And we can walk with them, offer consistency, and celebrate even small steps forward. All right, let's close by remembering that healing doesn't come from judgment, but from connection. Indigenous culture, ceremony, family, and identity are central to wellness. And thanks for showing up for this work and for your commitment to the families you serve. And listed here are just a few examples of nationally accessible resources. So you can take note of those. All right, that brings us to the end of this webinar, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope there's been some information that will be useful for you moving forward in your journey and supporting children and youth in your home, as well as their families. So thanks for joining. Take care.